In the end, after a long and exhausting battle between the demon boss and me, I managed to defeat him. As expected of a boss-ranked monster, the rewards were excellent. I obtained a demon boss pendant, a greed orb, a demon horn, and a fragment of the world tree, which has strong magical energy and is used as material to enhance magical tools. Although I don't know where to use it, I can't throw it away since I might need it in the future. I put on the demon boss pendant and realized it had an effect, but I needed the other pendant. I wondered if I would find the rest of these items while continuing to hunt demons. I would find out soon. Then I examined the greed orb, which increases magical effects and allows me to deal more damage. If I had magic-type skills, I would have liked to use it. At that moment, there were monster heads near my feet, and I saw they were from Igris. I asked him if he could stop doing that, as he repeatedly brought those heads to my feet. Why did he need them? But as soon as I turned my head, I saw Iron bringing me the boss's head. I didn't understand why Iron kept repeating what Igris did. Iron was quite clumsy, not to mention that I finished off the demon boss, but Iron helped. He lent me his shield when danger approached. A group of my shadow soldiers were distracting themselves with Iron. I told my magic unit to stop paying attention to strange things and to come to me. My mage approached, and I handed him the magic orb. I ordered him to aim and strike the building I was pointing at with all his strength. He began to conjure his fireball, but I didn't expect it to be many times larger than his previous orbs. It was incredible, such power, and just as he started his attack, the building began to burn. It was unreal. Then he handed me the orb, and I realized it had incredible power. There was no clause in its description that indicated it couldn't be passed to another person. I wondered about the incredible power. Honestly, who would have thought I could find something like this? If the hunter mages found out, they would go crazy. Meanwhile, at the hunter agency in Washington, Dong-Su was talking to the guy they found in a dungeon. He said an interesting and incredible case had arisen. A monster could speak like a human and also Korean. The guy said he wasn't a monster and that they should run a DNA test or something to prove it. Dong-Su thought he should be cautious. It was logical for them that a monster was pretending to be a person. The guy didn't understand why they were doing all this. After all, he just wanted to go home. But Dong-Su started saying it would be better if he began to cooperate with them because his word would determine whether he was a man or a monster. The man agreed, and Dong-Su immediately started asking questions. If he had died in the dungeon, how he had survived for 10 years in that dungeon, and if he was undead. But to all these questions, the man answered no. Dong-Su began to say that if a man died in a dungeon, he could return like he did. But the guy responded that it was impossible, as someone who dies cannot come back, even if they were in a dungeon. The guy also decided to ask questions, although Dong-Su said he was the one asking the questions. But the guy didn't care and started talking about the gates and the monsters. How much does humanity know about this? Dong-Su didn't know what he meant, but the deputy director, who was near the window watching the conversation, was curious about what he knew about the other side. The guy continued saying that the dungeon, the portals, and the monsters were just a prologue to the real war, and that the greatest disaster had awakened not long ago. Dong-Su reacted and began to ask what the purpose of the guy appearing was, and the guy replied that it was to warn of a greater disaster. To which Dong-Su continued asking what the greater disaster he was talking about was, but his response was that he couldn't say. It was incomprehensible to Dong-Su that if the guy had returned to warn of the disaster, but couldn't clarify what kind of disaster, the best thing would be to work together against the disaster. But the guy responded that the number of people meant nothing against that power, and that even if people united, they would simply be used, and Dong-Su should know that, since he is somewhat strong. Dong-Su didn't like what he said and told him not to underestimate him, and that if he thought only he could stop the disaster, there was no point in continuing the conversation. Then, Dong-Su looked at the guy's records and realized that if the guy cut his hair, he would match the photo, but he hadn't aged much after being in a dungeon for 10 years. Dong-Su noted that his resume was very well done, and in these times he would have earned a lot of money with the current ranking system and his level. He could live without worrying about anything, as he had to adapt to the new era. And just when Dong-su continued reading the report, he saw that the man had 2 children. At that moment, Dong-su was shocked to realize that I am the guy's son. After that, Dong-su asked the guy if he remembered his daughter's name, and he responded that her name was Sung-jin and his son was Jin-woo. When my father mentioned my name, a bloodthirsty look awoke in Dong-su. My father asked what was going on, and then Dong-su said he was the one asking the questions. But at that moment, my father also got ready, and a strong aura emanated from him. He told Dong-su that he needed an answer, and if he didn't respond, he would use force. However, Dong-su thought my father was too arrogant, and that the gods had given him a second chance to take revenge on me. Then, Dong-su pressed the red button. He said that my father probably turned out to be a monster they had to destroy. Dong-su began to say that the monster could attack at any moment and that they needed to evacuate quickly. Additionally, Dong-su said he was well aware of my current condition because to him, I was dead. My father couldn't believe Dong-su's words, and as soon as he looked up, he saw Dong-su smiling furiously, saying he would send him to his son. In the fire dungeon, I was already on a different floor, and I realized this was the floor of the dead. A horde of ferocious zombies and terrifying skeletons were headed straight towards me, intent on finishing me off. There were so many that I couldn't see where they ended, with a skeletal sorcerer leading them. This mage seemed to be controlling all the monsters on this floor. I knew I had to take him down, and then all those monsters would fall. I didn't want to get my hands dirty, so I called Iron and Igris and ordered them to clear a path for me. They appeared immediately and began to carry out my orders without wasting a second. They charged forward, eliminating anyone who stood in their way. As we got closer to them, the battle began. After my commanders-in-chief, the rest of the shadow soldiers and bears rushed in. They fought very efficiently. My shadow soldiers outnumbered all the other monsters on this floor, and that made me very happy. After all, I looked at that mage and knew he was surprised at how strong my guys were. I was already standing near him and he noticed me. I asked the mage if he expected this. Weren't we stronger? It would only be a few minutes before we could clear this floor and move on. That skeleton looked at me with a strange expression, and I wondered if an undead creature could feel fear. But it no longer mattered because I had already started to act and tear him apart with my ability. I thought he would be stronger, but he turned out to be just an ordinary mage standing in my way.